Good afternoon, friends. As you know, we are having discussion on fiscal policy and economic growth. Yesterday we saw in an international perspective. Today we will move further and will try to understand how fiscal policy and growth, economic growth, can boost Indian economy and what are the strengths and weaknesses, so we can overcome our problems with major steps if taken in a giving some kind of boost. We can say this, how can be utilized better way in the Indian perspective. So on your behalf, I welcome an eminent economist, Dr. S.C. Sharma. He has written 2 books and regularly contribute in national and international journal. So on your behalf, I welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Friends, I'll pick up the threads from yesterday's discussion, which I had with you on the question of how fiscal policy and economic growth are related with each other, and how the fiscal policy at the end of the day, it leads to accumulation of debt, which ultimately becomes the cause for any economic or any major macroeconomic crisis. This is what we discussed yesterday. Now, while discussing that, I tried to give you the trends in fiscal deficit. I also tried to give you the trends in current account deficit, and also by combining these two together, I told you that what is the level of our debt to GDP ratio. In the process, I also told you that as far as our debt to GDP ratio is concerned, it is not only the size which is very large, but the composition of our debt to GDP ratio is such that it is heavily biased towards internal debt. And as such, as far as we are concerned, we do not foresee any trouble in the international capital market front in the form of currency crisis. That is what we discussed. I tried to tell you yesterday. Moreover, see, even if our debt is heavily tilted towards internal debt, we must remember that internal debt belongs to the domestic people, and this debt is distributed across a large number of people within the country. So therefore, internal debt in that sense is not going to create a any major macroeconomic crisis. I also told you that as far as our banking is concerned, you see, the macroeconomic crisis can either occur at the balance of payment front, they can also occur at the currency crisis level, they can also occur at the run to the banking sector also. But as I told you yesterday, that we do not have any problem on that account either, for the very simple reason that our banking sector is under the strict control of the central bank. Even if we look at the non-performing assets of our banking system, we will find that our NPAs are constantly under check, and on that account we do not have any problem. I also told you yesterday that our lending pattern in this country through the banking system is such that we do not indulge into reckless lending. That is, there is always a hope for the loan disbursed would be returning back. So, if there is no possibility of any major economic or macroeconomic crisis arising out of the size of the debt to GDP ratio, then what is the problem which the finance minister addresses in the budget? Yesterday I told you that budget has two sides, revenue and expenditure. Budget has two sides. On the one hand you have the expenditure, and on the other hand, on the other side you have the taxation. That is the revenue part. So, the fiscal policy only sets these two items in such a manner so that the government or the system is in a position to keep the business cycle under control, and also it is possible for them, it should be possible for the government to maintain a growing economy at a lower inflation rate. Now, that is the crux of the budgetary policy, which means that we have to find out that what is that which the finance minister should respond to. Now, that response can come only when we are in a position to identify the problem. The moment we have identified the problem, it should be possible for us to find a solution to that. Now, what is the problem? To understand the nature of the problem, we have to remember that what is that which the government does through its budgetary policy, and which are the areas where problems can emerge. Now, to understand that, let us start by realizing or by understanding or by remembering that the problem which the government faces, the problem belongs to the management of government finances. It is similar to the management of finances at the household level, which always tells you that one should try to manage its fiscal affairs in such a manner that it does not, he or she does not live beyond means. One has to live within means. That is exactly what the management of government finances also tells us. Now, this can be understood a little more clearly if we look at least the two parameters of the government finances. One is the current account deficit and the other is the fiscal deficit. If we look at it for the last couple of years, we would be in a position to understand it. But before I tell you the degree of the fiscal deficit and the current account deficit, before I do that, let me give you another hint that what we mean by the management of finances. You see, government meets its fiscal deficit by borrowing from domestic. Government also meets its current account deficit by borrowing, by foreign borrowing. Now, both these borrowings are to be paid for. Repayment of domestic borrowing has to be done. Repayment of foreign borrowing has also to be done. It is a different matter that the borrowing period or the repaying period could be 30 years, repaying period could be 20 years, repaying period could be 10 years, it is a different matter. But this repaying is not only of the principal, it has to be the interest also along with that is to be repaid. Now, how can you repay this interest and the principal? You can repay it more easily if you make use of the borrowed money more productively, so that you are in a position to enhance the level of your income. It is only that which can give you an easy handle to repay the loans which you have. Now that you remember this, and now with that you look at what is happening to the current account deficit and what is happening to the fiscal deficit and what is happening to the rate of growth, because these three are all tied together. It is from the growth that you would be in a position to create money, and out of that money you are in a position to pay back. Now, if your growth is all right, you have no problem, but if your growth is slowing down, you will have a problem. If you look at India's growth rate at factor cost as well as the current account and the current account deficits and the fiscal deficit, I will give you only some information starting with 2005-2006 and going up to 2012-13 for all the three parameters. Growth in 2005-2006 at 2004 prices, 4-5 prices was 9.5%. Remember, it is at factor cost and not at market prices. Okay. 9.5 was in 2005-06, 9.6 was 6-7, 9.3 was 7-8, 6.7% was in 2008-9, 8.8 was 2009-10, 9.3 was 10-11, 6.3 was 11-12, and for 12-13 it has come down to 5. It may come down below 5 also, because the final estimates are yet to come. These are provisional estimates which I am sharing with you. The likelihood is that we may end up less than 5. So, what we note in this growth process, that till we entered into the financial crisis era, that is 2008, our economy was growing in leaps and bounds. Then our fiscal stimulus came, and for another 2 years our economy was growing again around the same rate as it was growing in 2005-06. But then suddenly there is a slowdown from 9% to 6%, from 9% to 5%. And if you look at the growth rate in market prices, you will find that the growth rate in market prices is almost half than what we had in 2010. Now, this is the state of the economy, that this economy is now slowing down and slowing down at a very fast rate. Now, if you look at the current account deficit and the fiscal deficit, you will find a similar pattern. In the case of current account deficit, the pattern for these years was 1.2% of GDP was in 2005-6, 1.6 was 6-7, 1.2 was in 7-8, 2.3 was in 8-9, 2.8 was 9-10, 2.8 was 10-11, and then it starts suddenly shooting up, going up to 4%, more than 4% in 2010, 11-12 and 12-13 also. See, the current account deficit in the third quarter, that is the quarter, third quarter means September to December, the current account deficit had touched almost 6.7%. So, we have a very serious problem on the current account front. A very serious problem is developing on the fiscal deficit front also. Look at the data. The gross fiscal deficit in 2005-6 was 4%, almost a very reasonable level. Then it was 3.3 in 6-7. Then it was 2.5 in 7-8. It is less than the what we have decided for ourselves under the fiscal responsibility, budget responsibility bill, that we do not want to go below 3%. 3% is the level for the fiscal deficit, 2.5 in 2007-8, and then starts shooting up, 6% 2008-9, 6.5 2009-10. In 10-11 it came down to some 5%, but then it again started shooting up, reaching 5.7%, almost 6% in 2011-12, and I really do not know what will happen this year. In terms of the finance minister's statement, in the budget statement, he has sought to contain it at 5.2% or 5.1%. I really do not know where he would end up. But the point to remember is that we are very bad as far as the fiscal deficit is concerned, or the capital account, the current account deficit is concerned. On both these accounts, we are very, very bad. Our situation is very bad, and it is reflected in the slowing of the growth rate. Now, what does it mean? Why it is that after pushing the growth rate for 2 years, your fiscal policy has not been in a position to do anything to the growth of the economy, rather it has added to the slowing down of the economy. Is it that our potential growth rate is only about 5%? Or is there any still gap between the actual output and the potential output? Now, this is one question which needs to be looked into. Our own feeling is, and this is what the available evidence is also telling us, that India has probably reached its long run economic growth of 5%, which means that its potential growth rate will not be much different from this 5%. Now, this is a question which is a very disturbing question, but in the context of today's discussion, it is not possible for us to enter into that question or try to find an answer to that question, but I am only hinting this for any serious reader or any serious student who really want to understand the nature of the functioning of the Indian economy at a deeper level. For them, it is a question which they can start looking for an answer, but for the purposes, today's purposes, I won't go into that. I will only try to make few observations, and these observations are in the context of fiscal policy only. That is, if when your economy is growing, borrowing generally does not matter much, because when your economy is growing, you are using the borrowed money productively. So, it is possible for you to make repayments. So, therefore, when the economy is growing, borrowing does not create or what does not matter much. When it matters only when economy is slowing, and this is the time when our economy has started slowing down. So, therefore, borrowing is becoming an important factor. Now, with this background and adding one more information, I gave you yesterday also, but it is only a repetition or it is only a recapitulation. Borrowing leads where? I told you yesterday also that borrowing to the fiscal deficit, either it has to create output and employment, which it does in the short run, but otherwise this will lead to inflation. It leads to inflation, it also leads to the higher real and nominal interest rates also. Now, that being the case, if the rate of interest are high, it will crowd out the private investment. Now, if the private investment is not coming forward, if private investment is needed in factories, it is needed in the infrastructure. If that is not coming forth, then it is a serious problem. And this is the problem with which India today is faced with. Inflation, rate of interest, and then lack of private investment, and then your growth. So, what is the way out? It is these problems which the budget 13-14 has to address, keeping in mind that it cannot continue with structural deficits, that is, it cannot continue, it has to contain deficit. Now, how do you contain deficit? Which means that you have to shore up your revenues, you have to put a control on the expenditure. That is the only way. There is no other way. Now, how do you put a brake on the expenditure? That one way, because if you look into the structure of our subsidies are very large. So, one way to put a control on the expenditure is to contain subsidies or to reduce subsidies. This is one way. Only by reducing subsidies, you are containing your expenditure, you are curtailing your expenditure, and if you are curtailing your expenditure, then you have a control over the expenditure, or you have a control over the deficit. That is one way. What is the other way? You can adapt to your resources by, if you have to contain your expenditure, how do you do that? We have another area which we can tap. That area is what we can do, and this is what we have been doing, keep on selling our government stake in public companies. So you will get money. Put a brake on the expenditure through various means. And also try to shore up your finances through either expanding the base of your taxation or bringing about certain changes in the taxation system. There is no other way through which you can do it. Now, what we have to see now is that how the budget for the year 2013 and 14 has responded to these problems, and then we will analyze further. Now, if you look into the 2013-14 budget, you can easily discern that this budget is a growth gamble. It is a gamble for growth on the supply side. It is not on the demand side. Had it been on the demand side, then it would not have addressed the problem of containing expenditure. It would have gone in for enhancing expenditure, so that the budget is looking at growth from the area demand side. That is not the case. In 2013-14, the government has sought to enhance to shore up the supply side or make supply side as engine of growth by providing incentives for productive investment. This is one. The other step which the budget 2013-14 has taken, it has stepped up expenditure on social sector. Now, any expenditure on social sector, whether it is on education or it is on health or on any other social sector, it inaugurates growth in the long run. It does not have any short-term effect, but it has an effect on the long run. So that is the second step which the budget 2013-14 has taken. There is a third step which you will come across, and that third step is that belongs to some tax soap is a very marginal, maybe a lip service, but this has been done. It has been done to provide relief from the impact of inflation onto the middle class, their vote bank, whatever you may call it. That is the response which the government has given. Specifically, if you look into the data, you will discover that the expenditure earmarked on the social sector that expenditure has gone up by about 16% of the one which it had last year. And largely it is on education, it is on health, and it is on what we call the other social sectors. And to meet this expenditure, government has introduced higher taxation for the rich individuals and rich corporates. Higher taxation onto the rich people like Premji, like Infosystem. These people are very rich, billionaires. On them the taxation is higher. The other area which they are tapping is the sale of government stake in the government companies. Another area which they are trying to explore is the auctioning of telecommunication bandwidth. So that will give them millions and billions of, that is what they are expecting. They are also trying to attract foreign investment by easing rules in aviation. Aviation is one area. The other area is broadcasting, and third area is retailing. In these areas, they have already eased rules for attracting foreign investment. And also, they have taken steps to deregulate the discounted state-controlled diesel. Now, these are the steps which the budget 2013-14 has taken to shore up the revenue part. Now, this in nutshell is what the budget for 2013-14 contains. Now, we have to see how far these proposals would succeed in picking up the growth rate. They have taken certain decision, they have recommended certain decision, they are likely to put that to implementation. The question is that what do we make out of these plans of the fiscal 2013-14. Now, in order to understand that, can we say, I'll make a starting point from, as I told you that government has taken step to enhance its expenditure by 16% on the social sector. They have also decided to spend some 100 billion rupees on the what they call the food security to provide. You see, all these efforts are made, and these efforts would show up in the long run, not in the short run. Now, there are two questions which needs to be looked into on this. A, should we go in for such kind of expenditure, or it is not necessary for us to go in for? And if our answer is that we must go in for these kind of expenditures, because it is these expenditures which add to the education, add to skill of the manpower. Health makes them healthy, productive, their mind will start working, their physique will start working. Now, large chunk of our population, we also know that they are living in very abject conditions, below poverty people, are not in a position to make two ends meet, to provide them food at a subsidized food grains at subsidized rates. Is it necessary or it is not necessary? Now, it is a debatable question, but if you look at it from a human, let us not look at it from politics, let us not look at it from economics. Because politics has its own answer to these questions and economics has its own answers to these questions. Anyone familiar with the time when National Rural Employment Guarantee Act was enacted in Indian Parliament, the Indian media was divided, Indian academics were divided and divided very sharply. So these are questions which cannot be debated in a discourse like this, but we have to remember, we will not go into the politics of this, we will not go into the economics of this. I will only go in for the human angle into this. The human angle says that if I am using food 2 times, why my neighbor should not? What is the difference between me and my neighbor? So that if we look at the problem in this manner, we will certainly find that this $100 billion rupee is a useful expenditure. Now, it is a different matter that this 100 billion rupees may not be sufficient. It is a different matter, but it is the necessity. Now, the second question which we have to analyze or deal with, the 16% expenditure or the total revenues which are available to us, are they sufficient or they are not sufficient? My response to this is, and this is a response which is based on certain hard empirical data. Today, our revenue constitute only 18% of our GDP. If we have to meet our expenditure on the social sector, our requirements, we need to enhance our revenue at least by to reach it 25%. How do we do that? The revenue can be enhanced. There are ways which we have, but one of the ways through which we can raise is through expanding the tax base. You see, I really don't know whether you have been taught public finance or not, but the very first chapter or the introduction, when introduction is given to a student on taxation in public finance, he or she is told that if one has to live in a civilized society, then one must learn to pay for it. So that is the importance of taxation. If you have to live in a civilized society, you have to be protected against law and order disorder. You have to be protected against so many things. But at the same time, you are to be taught, you are to be made healthy, you are to be provided food also. So which means that it is your duty to contribute. Now what is our situation? On this front, our situation is very bad. Our tax base is very narrow. It consists of only direct taxes and indirect taxes. And direct taxes are largely individual and corporates which are organized in the organized sector. Large chunk of our income is generated in the informal sector. That informal sector goes untapped. This is one problem. The other problem, it is a different matter to say that we are a poor agriculture country. What are the facts? The facts are that the land distribution pattern is such that you have a landed aristocracy spread all over the country, but we are not tapping income. So agriculture is out of the purview of taxation. So how do you enhance this revenue? So this enhancement of taxation, the enlarging the base, these are questions which are political in nature. These are political in nature, but these are questions which one has to address. Also, you see, if you look at this problem in a different, I will come to that a little later in the context of something else. Right now, only remember that we are neither in a position to enhance our tax base nor in a position to bring agriculture under our tax net. So how do we expect that the needed expenditure in the social sector, from where it will come? In education, in health, we are very bad. If you look into the availability of doctors per head of population, look at our education system. What is happening? What we need? We thought of that the private sector will come forward and bridge the gap. What is happening? At the end of the day, the private sector, universities are only meant for distributing degrees. So we have to think of, we have to organize our politics. No, okay, I will not go into that. So what we have to remember is that the pressure to spend on education, on health, on other sectors, this will continue to be there. We can't get rid of this. It is necessary evil, which it is necessary we have to keep it along. But we are not yet in a position to do that, because to do that we need. So on that front, our budget has failed, if not altogether, quite a. We have not succeeded in on that account. Now, when people were discussing the budget 2013-14, a point was repeatedly coming into the debate, and the point which was coming into the debate was that fiscal and monetary stimulus which was given at the time of financial crisis was not necessary, What was necessary was something else. The view which was debated was that it is not because of the stimulus that we have entered into this kind of problem. The view was that it is because of the fact that RBI that is the central bank of this country, is controlling the system. That is, the entire bond market is controlled by the central bank. So much so that about 16% of the government borrowing is not with the commercial banks or with others, it is with the central bank. So it is this which is creating problem. Then those who are propagating this, they are forgetting one thing, that finance is such that if finance is not regulated, it can create havoc. It is the unregulated system which was in operation in America. It was unregulated finance which led to the financial crisis of 2008. And now they are entering into a different kind of problem. Now they have regulated the system. Now they want now again a deregulation. It's a different story which is emerging in the developed world. The story which is building up, I will come to that a little later after I have gone through some of the more issues. Now there is also a view, and this also came into the debate. The point was that our growth in the after 1991 or in the first decade of the 21st century was locally manufactured. So it is on this view that the government went in for fiscal and monetary stimulus. People say that it was a mistake on the part of government to go in for stimulus. And this is what I hinted yesterday also. You see, our growth was export-led growth. Ours was an export-led growth. So that being the case, it was not necessary for us to go in for fiscal or monetary stimulus at that point of time. It was not necessary altogether. So what it had done? See, this has led to the problem on the competitiveness. Today we are not in a position to export because our partners in trade They do not have money. They do not have money. Now, they are going to create another type of problem for our country. That problem which they are likely to create, or which is likely to come up, because there is a problem which is being debated now in the developed part of the world, whether we need keep spending or we need to go in for austerity measures. Now, if we keep spending, it has its side effects. If we go in for austerity, it has also side effects. So, what do? We are caught in it is a catch-22 situation as far as we are concerned. So, the effort which has been made in the year 2013-14, in whatever way you may call, it will point to the following, that your finance minister has identified the problem. He has been constrained by the political system. He has not been in a position to go in for structural reforms, more structural reforms which are needed at this point of time. Because if you are a keen observer, then you will readily agree with me the kind of politics which was being played on the question of land acquisition, on the questions of labor reforms, on the questions on broadcasting. What is the problem? Our problem is that we are a politically democratic governing country who have come together not on a common minimum platform, but for capturing power. Opposing both bank political parties, combining together, are governing this country. So, the government sometimes gives only a lip service to the needed reforms, or it moves so slowly so that it is in a position to complete its full 5-year term. Any keen observer of the political system can immediately understand that under these circumstances, it is not very easy to move further. The only positive thing of the 2013-14 budget, to my mind, is that the finance minister has identified the nature of the problem. He has made some effort in that direction. I will not say full effort. He has made some effort in that direction. I hope that he will succeed if these efforts are continued, not only by him, but any other finance minister in the seat or any other finance minister in the seat. We have to keep all the time in mind that the world economy is in recession. 6 years have gone by, recession is not showing any signs of recovery. Whole of Europe is struggling with leave aside Germany. Germany is better placed. But the rest of the Europe is reeling under debt. It will lead to any crisis at any point of time. We may end up what we saw in 1930. So we have to be very, very careful. Even among the so-called emerging economies, Brazil, Russia, then India, China, South Africa, all are in the declining phase of their growth. Even China has a serious problem on the local debt. Their local debt is becoming unsustainable. So the world is reeling under a very, very difficult situation. People have to put their heads together to find a solution. Let us hope that our finance minister continues with this speed. Is still time or?
No, you can just sum up.
I have summed up.
Okay. So, as you said that we are going in positive direction. So, what the extra steps what you're suggesting that need to be taken up so that we can get recovery
You see, for
faster?
the time being, I have given a very careful thought that, you see, India, we have to situate ourselves in a world scenario. The world scenario is not very rosy as far as we are concerned.
Okay.
So we have to learn to live within our means. We must not go whole hog for deficit financing of the size which we did at the time of financial crisis.
Okay. So these are the one suggestion.
The second solution is that we have to address the constraints on the supply side. That is, remove almost everywhere, wherever you find any constant which inhibits the investment in factories or in infrastructure. We have to move in that direction.
Okay. And India is predominantly agricultural, we can say the more focus on agriculture. So how agriculture can be integrated with the market?
Agriculture, you see, how agriculture can be integrated. Agriculture integration is only that you have to withdraw the surplus labor from the agriculture sector, which we have not been able to do that.
But do you still think that we have a surplus labor in agriculture sector area due to the many programs?
If you look into the agriculture labor, we have enough. You see, our system, to my mind, this is my personal view, you may or may not agree with this. We have a problem in the agriculture, we have a problem in the education, we have a problem in the health sector, we have problem in the agriculture sector also.
Okay.
If you look into the land distribution pattern, is highly skewed.
Okay.
There are areas where still the old feudal landlordism is available.
Okay. So, well, friends, in this lecture we try to understand the different aspects, and some suggestion has also given Dr. S.C. Sharma, and of course there are many other ways to come out to solve this problem. So we all have to make effort, government, intelligentsia, general public, only then we can overcome the problem. So with this word we conclude the lecture. I thank all of you for watching the lecture, and on your behalf I thank Dr. S.C. Sharma for giving such an insightful lecture. Thank you very much.